Hi, I'm Bill Spiegel, crops editor at Successful Farming Magazine and Agriculture.com, with this week's question of the week for our friends at Xtreme Ag. And that is, what has been the biggest challenge of 2020?
Hi, this is Garrett from Xtreme Ag. The biggest challenge for the 2020 growing season. Well, before August 9th, I thought it was the grain markets and dealing with futures prices that were below the price of production and how we were going to make a living. And I was worried for financial reasons. On August 10th, the derecho hits. And the devastation from that storm and the corn and soybeans both was pretty incredible. And something I hope I don't ever have to see again, but well, Mother Nature's in charge, as we have learned. So to be dealing with the financial worries that we had before August 9th, and then the just the worries how we're going to harvest that down corn after August 10th was quite a thing that you have to deal with. It's a very humbling experience as a farmer and a grower to face all the challenges we have, and the storm was definitely it for me. Thanks.
Kevin Matthews with Xtreme Ag. Question of the week is the challenges. What's our biggest challenge for 2020 that we faced? And as farmers, we want to say the weather, but weather's always a challenge, especially here on the East Coast. And help is a challenge. We've got great help, but it's hard to find replacements for such a talented group that we have. But our biggest challenge this year, no question about it, has been our equipment. Our John Deere in the spring, we lost several days planting due to software glitches. They did software upgrades that weren't compatible with our mobile RTK, and it was just extremely costly to our operation. This fall, the emissions, these Mack trucks, our John Deere combines, we've had tremendous emissions trouble out of one machine. More downtime this harvest than I have every harvest combined since I started farming at 16 years old. And you can't plan, you can't prepare. We expect the weather to be a challenge. We know that. We can kind of forecast and work around it, but you get a real pretty day and you got a $500,000 machine broke down, and due to a sensor or emissions issue, and everything's running properly, that's a tremendous challenge. It's only going to get worse. This equipment's getting more expensive. The people that's making this equipment are removed from the farm. They don't realize how big an impact those 6 hours a day that we get to run is. Due to our dew points in the mornings, you can't harvest on the East Coast as early as you can in other areas of the U.S. and the world. So we have a short run time, short window, and we got every hour that machine has got to run. It's got to be planting, it's got to be harvesting. We just can't have downtime. But hope everybody stays safe. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and we look forward to sharing more of what went on this past year and what we're planning for next year. Thank you.
Hey everybody, this is Lee Lubbers, and our biggest challenge of this year's growing season was the weather. We went from literally flash floods to flash drought. We started being abnormally wet in 2018, and 2019 didn't let up. Spring of 2020 started out, gave us a reprieve to get going, and then 1st of May we got hit for 3 weeks with flooding rains, a lot of water damage, water over the roads. Pushed us back on planting. We got back in the field, get everything popped in, and it grew amazingly well. And then actually the morning of the big windstorm that swept through Iowa, we got hit with rain and hail that morning on part of our acres. And that was the last rain we got all the way through harvest until we got our first snowfall partway through corn harvest. So weather was definitely the big challenge. Like I said, we went from flash flood to flash drought. Still very happy with yields, but definitely a challenge.
Matt Miles from McGee, Arkansas, southeast corner in the Delta. The question was asked to me, what was our biggest challenge in 2020? Man, it's so hard, for me to pick one between the markets and the weather and the COVID stuff, which my family went through, and all safe from that. Here at the end, the elections, it's really hard to kind of pick the biggest challenge of 2020. But if I had to pick one, it's probably going to be the weather. Here in Arkansas, we had multiple hurricanes come through during harvest time. And that was probably the biggest challenge of the whole crop season for us. We had 1,500 acres of rice. We cut 1,300 of that on the ground. And when I say on the ground, I don't mean just kind of leaning over. I mean matted to the ground. The next hurricane behind it sprouted it, so you can imagine trying to pick that up. Combines that normally get 70 acres a day was getting 20 acres a day. We cut on one farm, a 1,000 acre farm. We cut on it for 32 days. So that kind of gives you an idea of what that was like. 4,000 acres of beans. We probably had 1,500 to 2,000 of those on the ground. From the next hurricane, and on the raised bed system that we're on, it's almost impossible to get them all. Corn fared pretty well. We had a little bit of that go down in the first one, but overall it was the best crop that made it. Cotton was probably as bad as any of them. We ended up losing about 30% of our cotton, just the straight line winds and rain on the last hurricane. So, all in all, that was probably our biggest challenge. We still had a pretty decent yields. We can thank the good Lord for that, but Mother Nature was definitely not a friend to us this harvest.
So what was the biggest challenge of 2020? Ours would have to be the planting conditions in the spring. It was hard to get planted and hard to get started. Just for instance, we have about 3,500 acres of soybeans. We had 150 acres of beans planted when we started gathering and planting our double crop beans, which is the 1st of June. And that's just not normal for us. So ours would definitely be the late planting in the spring. And then it drove things even later, through the year and into harvest. So 2020 was definitely one to remember, and we hope it's over with in some form or fashion. But it was a rough one.
Question of the week: what was the most challenging thing of 2020? Well, I don't know how you could leave the whole COVID thing out. That would probably be the most challenging thing. And it wasn't really the disease, because the disease didn't really affect our family or people close to us. But what it did affect was day-to-day operations. So we noticed a lot of slowing of things getting to us. Even the U.S. mail seemed to slow. Parts were harder to get. If you order something, it would take longer. Those kind of things started becoming pretty frustrating, and they're not over with yet.
Join us again soon for another question of the week with our friends at Xtreme Ag.